Alright, hey there everyone. This is a replay cast of a match from Total War Warhammer 3. We've got me playing as the Ogre Kingdoms and my opponent is playing as the Empire. So I'm fairly new at this game as far as playing multiplayer. I've played campaigns in Total War Warhammer and some of the other Total War games in the past, but I'm not so familiar with the unit rosters. I've only played Ogre Kingdoms in multiplayer so far, and I've not played any of the campaigns on Total War Warhammer 3, so I'm still getting to learn the faction matchups and whatnot, but I'm going to be doing a breakdown of this one-on-one domination match on Broken Leg Gully. And a couple of things that I was thinking about going into this match was, as the Ogre Kingdoms, my main thing that I've noticed is that dealing with anti-large units is huge. Just focusing down anti-large units is a big part of the game. That not realizing that lost me a lot of matches when I first started playing this game, and I've probably only played 15 matches or so at this point, but I kind of understand the mechanics of these Total War games. So my thought coming into this was, I know that the Empire usually has a lot of foot soldiers and sometimes heavy cavalry, so my thought process was I use lead belchers and Noblar scrap launchers, basically artillery units, to take down infantry and sometimes archers, depending on what they bring. Use Noblars to slow down their frontline troops. I brought Greasus Goldtooth because he's the only lord that I'm aware of for the ogres that's going to be able to sit in a one-on-one against a strong enemy lord or a bunch of knights or something like that. If he gets caught out, maybe I mismaneuver him, and we'll be able to hold his own, especially since he's anti-large. And then use Mournfang cavalry to deal with their cavalry, saber-tusk packs, to chase off enemy troops that are fleeing or are trying to flank and maybe are not too heavy. The enemy has brought a lot of spears. They've got 3 squads of spearmen, one going up the flank. They've got 4 squads of halberdier, 3 groups of huntsmen, Volkmar the Grim on his chariot, outriders with grenade launchers, and great cannons. So as you see, a lot of anti-large. And when I talked about using artillery to take down anti-large and lead belchers, my main focus is shooting down spearmen. Kind of slow them down with Noblars, shoot them with those big missile units, and then deal with everything else as I may. But that's my focus. So I'll get to real speed here. And in case you're curious about the colors, you can change the faction colors for ally, enemy, and whatnot in the options, and so that's what I did. Now I started off seeing these outriders come up front, and I figured I'd just shoot at them with my scrap launchers right away. And my focus here is to control this middle point and this side point, so points 1 and 2. This one's closer to my spawn, and I figured that with my missile heavy playstyle in this matchup, that was just going to work well. I'd take this point, get missile units here and in the middle, and then kind of rain down on this contested point and hold this, which I figured the enemy probably wouldn't play for this as much. I did send up these saber tusks as well as these Mournfangs up onto the hillside. And you can see I ran the saber tusk back into the woods. I saw his demigryph knights with halberds coming, and they would absolutely wreck my saber tusk, but I figured if he runs past and tries to compete for this point, I can run the saber tusk around and go for these cannons. And I was kind of waiting to see if he was going to summon in other troops so that I would know it was clear, because if I run straight in there, he might just summon something and protect it. You can see my lead belchers are starting to take some fire from the huntsmen. Same thing with my lord. And their spearmen and their halberdiers are taking a lot of damage already. These are really cheap troops though, so it probably isn't a big deal for him. But again, Noblar's up front screening. Ideally, I should bring Greasus back. He's not going to fight well against any of these units, and he's just going to take missile fire from the huntsmen. Pulling back my lead belchers. He's advancing forward with his huntsmen and all his troops, and then you can see he split his spearmen. He didn't cover this gap, so I put my I did a short right-click drag to move my Ogre Bulls with dual weapons into a sort of a column formation, just a thin formation, and then run them right at the middle. And my intention was to get them in here and disrupt the Huntsman and his range line. You can see that my catapults and whatnot are just absolutely obliterating these guys. But my front line is breaking. Noblars are not great at fighting. My Mournfang Cavalry are doing well against his Demigryph Knights, and my Saber-Tusk pack got on top of the Great Cannon crew and is dealing with them. So he's probably so focused on here that he didn't notice that I had captured, or not captured, but taken these guys out or got on top of them. And that's a huge win for me as far as value. But you can see my Lead Belchers are getting really beaten up by these Huntsmen. And he's completely crushing me on the front line. These Ogre Bulls are really causing some disruption back here, though. You know, dealing with a whole group of Huntsmen. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't shoot these guys down with the other Huntsmen and just to free them up. But at this point, I backed up because I realized there's no way. I have basically all range units and then my Lord and my Butcher, who I recently brought in. So I was thinking, okay, I'm going to bring in some more Saber-Tusks, some more Noblars. Keep slowing them down with the Noblars. I did bring in another Scrap Launcher as well. That might not have been necessary at the time, but I figured anything I can do to just get rid of all his Spearmen is going to give me a big boon. And then my Saber-Tusk can run around the sides and continue to harass their archers. Now, yeah, just a lot of missile fire. You can see I'm still, what do they call it, shooting and scooting. You know, unload some shots with my Lead Belchers and my Noblar Scrap Launchers, pull them back. Luckily, the Scrap Launchers have 80 armor, so the Huntsmen aren't doing that much. Although they have anti-large, they do not have good armor piercing. And so at this point, I've got Greasus going after Volkmar. I got Mournfang Cavalry who beat off those. That's probably not the best choice of words, but they killed those Demigryph Knights with halberds up on the side. And I've got them coming around the flank to take out Volkmar the Grim, or at least to trap him up so that Greasus can catch up. And so he did get kind of caught up in here. I think he was sent after the Saber-Tusk pack, but either way. And got some Noblars up on the hillside. They were fleeing my Lead Belchers, and some of my troops are going after these Outriders. I guess I haven't targeted them yet, but I believe at some point I start shooting at them with the Lead Belchers. And then this was probably not a good move on my point, so I sent my Hunter to deal with these Outriders. I initially set a melee attack on him. Got the Scrap Launcher shooting in there as well. But I probably should have just kept him back and had him use his ranged attack on them. Starting to clean up the state troops on the front. Again, the Lead Belchers and the Scrap Launchers are really doing their job. I did not bring any Iron Blasters this match because I figured he probably wouldn't have too many heavily armored troops. And although the Empire sometimes has good armored cav, like the Demigryph Knights that we saw, I figured my Mournfang Cavalry and other troops could deal with them. So at this point, I dropped some army abilities. It might not be exactly now, but at some point I put army abilities on Greasus and on the Mournfang Cavalry just to give them extra damage output. I popped his what was his ability? Scepter of Titans. And then I also used the slow on Volkmar the Grim. Looks like he's using some abilities as well. But at some point, yeah. Yep, I used Everyone Has Their Price. And then I believe I used another one that, I think at some point during this melee I used the army spell that slows down the enemy unit. I forget what it's called, if it's like Dismember or something like that. The Ogre Kingdoms have 3 different abilities that throughout the combat they will basically unlock. And then as you use them, it takes up some of the charge, and you got to keep fighting it to use them again later. So chasing off some Outriders with my Saber-Tusks. I'm bringing this Butcher back because I don't want him fighting against a group of Spearmen by himself. Got my Hunter up here chasing another group of Outriders. And at this point, I'm realizing, oh my gosh, this guy has almost 600 points, and I don't have any because after the Demigryph Knights and my Mournfang Cavalry were fighting up here, I never went back and captured the point. And this is just one of those things, you know, I'm new at playing multiplayer. I've never played Domination before, other than the last probably week. And so I'm starting to realize I've watched this game and domination matches on the Turing channel on YouTube, but I'm starting to realize how hard it is to keep an eye on the victory points, keep an eye on your different units, and make sure everyone has actions ordered or orders issued to them. And luckily I was able to take out Volkmar the Grim with Greasus and there's Mornfang Cavalry. I did lose the Mornfang Cavalry, so I believe they might stop fleeing, but they might run off all the way off the field. Regardless, continuing to push up with Gnoblars, and at this point I figured, part of me was thinking I should just try to take this point, but this is one of those things where you see the value trading. One thing I did good this match was being very mindful of unit matchups. So anytime there was a group of spearmen, I'm not sending ogres after them. I'm not sending in my big units after them. I was trying to trap them up with Gnoblars, shoot them down with artillery and lead belchers, and outside of that, completely avoid that. Unless they were really beat up and I figured I could chase them off with saber tusks or finish them off with a spell or just a quick charge, I was not taking fights like that. So although I'm desperate for points, I did not go for that with the saber tusks and the hunter rod that I had up there. I figured I'd save that for later and just try to focus on taking good value trades in the middle and on this flank. So I finally realized that my mana eaters with ogre pistols had been sitting here for probably like a minute, maybe longer, and I'm running them up. I've got the center under pretty good control. Unfortunately, I have these lead belchers that are chasing off some halberdiers. These guys are probably going to go all the way off the field. In fact, I think shattered means that they are going to go off the field guaranteed. So these guys should be coming back towards the middle fight with these scrap launchers. Greasus should also be moving back up. I was a little bit worried about him having more huntsmen and war wagons at this point, but I was able to run some saber tusks around this back area after they finished up their fight with the outriders up in these woods and get him around the back of these war wagons. And that allowed me to collapse from back here and from in here and take them out. So the remainder of this Demogryph squad is now running. Their war wagons are fleeing, and I've got control over the center and point 1 as well. You can see I've got Gnoblar scrap launchers shooting at these spearmen. I need to get these pistols out of here. I hope I run these guys soon. I can't remember exactly what happened during this match as far as like some of these smaller movements, but still bringing guys in, trying to hold his middle point. So I just summoned in some Gnoblars and Ogre Bulls with dual weapons, charging them up to the middle, and looking to just maintain control over this point. I'm realizing how far I am behind, and at this point I might need a triple capture, capturing all 3 victory points in order to win. So that's what's on my mind. I'm thinking, okay, how do I control these points and then get up here and take point 3 as well? So the huntsmen are still a problem, and I forget what I end up doing here, but I'm really just consolidating forces in the middle. Again, lead belchers are back on their way to help in the middle and take out these halberdiers, and saber tusks moving around just trying to keep mobile. And this is a big part of the match. So I just recently used I think it's called Bone Crusher. What's the spell called? Yeah, Bone Crusher spell. Somewhat low cost area of effect spell that I use on these spearmen. I figured he's probably not paying attention to these guys since there's a big melee, so I dropped that spell right here, and you can see it took out over half of their health. Normally I would not charge a saber tusk pack, but you can see how I timed it. So I used the Bone Crusher right on the charge, crush their morale with the spell and their health, charge in a saber tusk pack because they're a mobile unit, and then at the same time I use Massacre, which is the 2nd level Ogre Kingdoms ability on the saber tusk pack. And although that could potentially be seen as a waste of a spell, I figured given the point differential right now, I need to capture that from this guy, and using that spell might just be enough to do the damage I need to chase these guys off. So I got them off that point. Lead belchers and Gnoblars are shooting these guys up while I'm just slowing them down with my Lord and my caster. Huntsmen are still a problem, but at least I have the victory points. And now he's capturing this side point. He's up on this hillside. He's got downhill shots going into my man-eaters with ogre pistols. And again, not the best trade, but I need to get him off this point. Charging saber tusks into spearmen with shields is probably not the best, but I have other troops coming. I figured if he's going to be distracted shooting at my ogres with pistols, I'll be able to free up these guys and charge in and take them out. And so that's what I'm doing. Now, normally I wouldn't run these guys in here, but these units are all fleeing, and I figured I need to chase these guys out of here and just keep them away from this point. Again, these guys have pistols, so ideally, you know, they're getting shots off on armored targets, higher value targets, and not eating a bunch of shots from archers. But they were getting shot by these guys, so I figured we'll just run them into the melee, chase some guys away from the center, and do it that way. The reinforcements that I had brought in, the Noblars and the Ogre Bulls with dual weapons, I had issued them to get up here because I wasn't fully sure if my idea was going to work to chase off those spears. It did, and I didn't change their orders after winning that battle. But now the good thing is that they're up on this hillside, and I can use them to flank around. And I've got pretty good control over the middle, although my amount of melee troops in here is pretty sparse. I've got a fresh squad of Mournfang Cavalry. They've got 5 experience. You see they got the double silver chevrons. And I still have Noblar scrap launchers, 2 fresh ones, 1 up on the hillside that's relatively fresh, and my lead belchers still have some ammunition, although they don't have many models. But the thing is, this guy's forced into a position where he needs to capture points. I've got a triple cap. I'm starting to catch up to him. He's pretty low on troops, and you can see that I'm winning the value trades, and I still have some more points or supplies to bring in extra reinforcements. So I'm throwing Noblars on either point, some up here, back in the corner, just to make them have to charge even further if they're going to try to recapture that. And he's pushing all for the middle, so I sent my Saber Tusks and my Ogre Bulls to flank. Still got tons of artillery firing in here. My Mournfang Cavalry stopped their Demigryph Knights. I was trying to make sure that they wouldn't be able to charge in and disrupt my gun line. Noblar stopped the Outriders. I'm not sure. I think the Outriders were trying to pick off Greasus. You can see, I mean, this guy's got 197 health and he's not running. I guess it's because he has immune to psychology and he's got high leadership. So even if he's really low health and he's getting shot at by gunpowder units and whatnot, he's generally not going to run. And at that point, my opponent conceded. So he probably realized that his army was so beat up, even if he brought in some reinforcements, he wasn't going to have time to continue to try to get some better trades against me along with capturing points. So although I started off really far behind on victory points, I was taking good trades throughout that match and was luckily able to pull it back. So good game to my opponent. I'm going to give a quick look over the endgame stats and we'll wrap it up. So Greasus did fairly well, probably didn't get his full cost back, but this Mournfang Cavalry was probably MVP, 3,700 value, so that's probably 250% of what they cost. Lead Belchers did pretty good. The Noblar Scrappers did not do as good as I thought they did, but they felt like they had a pretty good impact. Ogre Bulls with dual weapons. Normally I would not have expected these guys to get this much damage dealt in a matchup against the Empire, especially with his roster, but because I was able to charge him in between the Spearmen and kind of wreak some havoc on the Huntsman line, that was huge. Saber Tusk pack, that's some, I mean, I just said the Mournfang Cavalry are basically the MVPs, but these guys did work as well. Butcher did alright, Ogre Pistols did alright, Hunter did pretty bad. Yeah, Saber Tusk did really well. So you can see the Saber Tusks and the Lead Belchers and the Mournfang Cavalry really did the most work for me. The Scrap Launchers I think were pretty key. Although they didn't get a ton of value, I think that clearing out some of these lower value units, the Halberdiers and the Spearmen, really allowed the Mournfang Cavalry and the Saber Tusk packs to wreak some havoc. And then quick look over my opponent's value. These grenade launcher Outriders unfortunately did not get much done. Neither did the Great Cannons, because I was able to get them with the Scrap Launchers really early, and the Great Cannons with the Saber Tusks. The Huntsmen were punishing. Those guys were his MVPs for sure. This Huntsman did a lot of work. Again, Halberdiers, Spearmen didn't really get too much done. Demigryph Knights did decent. I'm not sure how much these guys cost. I would assume they cost somewhere around how much damage they did. War Wagons didn't do great. But anyways, again, good game to my opponent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next replay.